When the four-star general stopped in front of me and looked at the scars on my arms, the silence in the barracks was so deep I could hear my own heart beating. In that moment, I knew everything was about to change. My name is Sarah Martinez. I'm 28 years old, and I was a sergeant in the United States Army. On that day, an ordinary Tuesday in October, I was kneeling on the cold floor of the uniform depot at Fort Bragg military base in North Carolina. My hands trembled slightly as they folded a camouflage pants for the 100th time. It wasn't exhaustion. It was anger. A dull, deep anger that I swallowed with every breath. Outside, through the small dusty window, I could hear the laughter of other soldiers during their lunch break. Carefree laughter. Laughter from those who weren't serving disciplinary punishment for insubordination and disrespect to the military hierarchy. Insubordination. That word echoed in my head like a cruel joke. I folded another uniform, and another, and another. The depot smelled of mildew and industrial detergent. The fluorescent light flickered annoyingly above my head. There were piles and piles of uniforms around me. My punishment was to fold and organize all of them, alone, for 2 consecutive weeks. 2 weeks that felt like an eternity. When I bent down to grab more uniforms from the box, the sleeve of my camouflage shirt rode up involuntarily. The scars were exposed. 3 thick, irregular lines running from my wrist to almost my left elbow. Pinkish marks, still relatively recent, that told a story no one on that base wanted to hear. I quickly pulled the sleeve down, but not fast enough to avoid feeling that familiar pang in my chest. That mixture of physical and emotional pain that visited me every time I saw those marks. 18 months ago. Kandahar province, Afghanistan. The memory came as it always came, fast, brutal, unwanted. The smell of gunpowder, the screams, the unbearable heat, the blood, so much blood, running down my arm as I dragged Soldier Johnson behind the improvised barricade. I shook my head violently, pushing away the memories. It wasn't time for that. It was never time for that. I continued folding the uniforms mechanically. Pants, shirt, pants, shirt. That's when I heard the footsteps. They weren't ordinary footsteps. They were firm, rhythmic, heavy. Military boots hitting the concrete floor with that cadence that only high-ranking officers can produce. And it wasn't just one pair of boots. There were several. My stomach contracted. The depot door burst open, slamming against the wall with a bang that made me jump. Automatically, I dropped the uniform I was folding and stood at attention, with my arms pressed against my body and my gaze fixed forward. Captain Morrison. My direct superior entered first, with that corner-of-the-mouth smile I had learned to hate. He was 42 years old, with close-cropped gray hair and small dark eyes that always seemed to be calculating something. He wore his impeccably pressed uniform as if it were armor, and walked with his chest puffed out like someone who thought himself untouchable. Behind him, 3 other officers I didn't know well, majors by their insignias, and then my heart nearly stopped. General Harrison. I recognized him immediately, even though I had never been this close to him before. 4 silver stars gleamed on each shoulder of his uniform. He was around 60 years old, with completely white hair cut in classic military style. His posture was upright, imposing, but there was something in his light blue eyes that conveyed not just authority, but also a sharp and penetrating intelligence. General Harrison was a living legend in the Army, decorated 3 times for bravery in combat. Veteran of 2 wars, known for being relentlessly fair and for not tolerating corruption or injustice in his ranks. And he was here, in the uniform depot, looking directly at me. "Soldier Martinez," Captain Morrison said in a loud, formal voice, clearly showing off for the general. "The soldier is serving disciplinary punishment as determined for grave insubordination that occurred last week." I remained at attention, looking forward, trying to control my breathing. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone in the room could hear it. The general didn't respond to Captain Morrison. Instead, he took 2 steps in my direction. His eyes scanned the depot, the endless piles of uniforms, and then returned to me. "How many days of punishment, Captain?" the general asked in a deep, controlled voice. 14 days, sir," Morrison responded promptly. The soldier demonstrated direct disrespect to my authority and to base regulations. 14 days folding uniforms, the general repeated slowly, as if he were chewing each word. He took another step in my direction. Now he was less than a meter from me. I could feel the weight of his presence, the authority that emanated from him like a physical force. "Look at me, soldier." I slowly turned my head and met his eyes. There was something there I couldn't decipher. It wasn't anger. It wasn't contempt. It was curiosity, recognition. "Your full name?" "Sarah Elizabeth Martinez, sir." "Rank?" "Private, sir." I saw a shadow pass across the general's face, his eyebrows furrowed slightly. "Private," he repeated, and there was a note of questioning in his voice. "Captain Morrison, what was this soldier's previous rank?" There was a brief but noticeable pause. Captain Morrison coughed lightly. "She was a sergeant, sir. She was demoted 3 months ago for improper conduct and repeated violations of military protocol." The general didn't take his eyes off me. 3 months, he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. And then it happened. General Harrison looked down at my hands that I kept firm at my sides. His eyebrows rose slightly. He had seen something. "Soldier Martinez, raise your arms." My stomach dropped. "Sir, raise your arms. That's an order." With my hands trembling imperceptibly, I slowly raised my arms to chest height, palms facing up. The sleeves of my camouflage shirt naturally slid down, completely revealing the scars. 3 thick, irregular, pinkish lines. They started just above my left wrist and snaked up to almost my elbow. They weren't clean, surgical scars. They were marks of war, marks of hot metal tearing through skin, marks of an explosion that nearly killed me. The silence in the depot became deafening. General Harrison leaned forward slightly, examining the scars carefully. His eyes narrowed, his jaw tightened, and then I saw something that completely shocked me. Recognition. His eyes widened slightly. He took a deep breath through his nose and stepped back, now looking not just at my scars, but at my face, as if he were seeing me for the first time. "Kandahar province," he said in a low voice, almost a whisper. 18 months ago, ambushed during routine patrol mission. My heart stopped. Completely. How did he know? The general continued, his voice growing stronger, clearer, filling the entire space of the depot. A unit of 12 soldiers was caught in a coordinated ambush. IED explosion followed by sustained small arms fire. The unit was pinned down with multiple casualties. They were going to die there. I felt my knees weaken. The room seemed to spin around me. But someone, the general continued, his eyes locked on mine. Someone refused to let that happen. A sergeant ignored direct orders to fall back and wait for air support. She ran through enemy fire, dragged 3 wounded soldiers to safety, used her own body as a shield, took shrapnel from a second explosion that should have killed her. My vision blurred. I blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. "That sergeant," General Harrison said, his voice now loud enough for everyone in the room to hear clearly, saved 11 lives that day. 11 American soldiers who came home to their families because of her actions. He turned slowly to look at Captain Morrison. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. That sergeant was awarded the Silver Star for valor in combat. I personally pinned that medal on her chest 7 months ago at a ceremony in Washington, D.C. The general's voice was ice. "And now you're telling me, Captain Morrison, that this same soldier, this decorated war hero, is folding laundry as punishment for insubordination. Captain Morrison's face had gone pale. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Sir, there were circumstances. What circumstances? The general cut him off sharply. What could possibly justify demoting a Silver Star recipient to private and having her fold uniforms like a recruit in basic training? I could see sweat beginning to form on Morrison's forehead. She disobeyed a direct order, sir. She questioned my judgment in front of other soldiers. Military discipline requires... The general held up one hand, silencing him instantly. Tell me something, Captain. When exactly did Sergeant Martinez get demoted? 3 months ago, sir. And when did she supposedly commit this act of insubordination that has her folding laundry right now? Morrison hesitated. Last week, sir. The general's eyes narrowed dangerously. So she was already demoted, already punished. And yet here she is, being punished again. For what exactly? Morrison's jaw tightened. I could see him fighting for control, fighting to maintain his authority in front of his superior. She accused me of misconduct, sir. She made false allegations that undermined unit cohesion and my ability to command effectively. False allegations, the general repeated slowly. He turned back to me. His expression had softened slightly, but his eyes were still intense, searching. Soldier Martinez, what did you accuse Captain Morrison of? My throat felt dry. I swallowed hard. Every instinct told me to stay silent, to not make waves, to accept my punishment and move on. That's what soldiers do. That's what I had been doing for 3 months. But something in the general's eyes told me this was my moment, maybe my only moment. Sir, I discovered that Captain Morrison was diverting military supplies and equipment, selling them on the black market. When I confronted him privately and told him I would report it, he accused me of theft instead. That's why I was demoted. And when I tried to gather evidence to prove my innocence, he charged me with insubordination. The words came out in a rush. 3 months of suppressed truth finally breaking free. The silence that followed was absolute. Captain Morrison's face turned red, then purple. That's a lie, he shouted. She's been trying to destroy my career ever since I had to discipline her for poor performance. She's unstable, sir. The trauma from Afghanistan affected her judgment. She sees conspiracies where there are none. The general held up his hand again, but this time he was looking at me. Do you have proof of these allegations, Soldier Martinez? I hesitated. This was it. The moment that would either vindicate me or destroy what little was left of my military career. I did have proof, sir. Photographs, documents, shipping manifests that didn't match inventory records. I kept copies in my personal locker. The general picked up on my word choice immediately. What happened to this evidence? My locker was searched 2 weeks ago. Captain Morrison claimed there had been reports of contraband. Everything was confiscated and allegedly destroyed. Allegedly, the general repeated. He turned to look at Captain Morrison. The other officers in the room, the majors who had entered with them, were watching the scene unfold with expressions of shock and discomfort. Captain Morrison, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I strongly suggest you think very carefully before you answer. Morrison straightened his spine, trying to reclaim some dignity. Yes, sir. Did you or did you not confiscate and destroy evidence that Soldier Martinez had gathered regarding supply discrepancies on this base? I destroyed nothing, sir. There was no evidence because there was no crime. Just the paranoid accusations of a disturbed soldier. The general stared at him for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he pulled out his phone. Colonel Jenkins, he said into the phone, I need you to immediately send a forensics team to Fort Bragg. I want a complete audit of all supply records for the past 6 months, cross-referenced with shipping manifests and inventory counts. Yes, immediately. I don't care if it's dinner time. And Jenkins, send MPs as well. I may need them. He hung up and looked back at Captain Morrison. "I'm placing you under investigation, Captain. Effective immediately, you are relieved of command pending the outcome of this audit." "Sir, you can't just—" Morrison started. "I can, and I am," the general said coldly. "And if I find out that you did even half of what Soldier Martinez is accusing you of, you won't just lose your command, you'll lose your freedom." He turned back to me. His expression had changed completely. The hardness was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like regret. "Soldier Martinez, I owe you an apology. The Army owes you an apology. You should never have been in this position. Sir, No, the general cut me off gently. "Let me finish. You saved 11 lives in Afghanistan. You earned your rank. You earned your honor. And someone tried to take that away from you." He looked around at the piles of uniforms, at the small, dingy depot that had been my prison for the past week. "This ends now." General Harrison pulled a radio from his belt. "Sergeant Davis, report to the uniform depot immediately. Bring your documentation kit." "Yes, sir," a voice crackled back through the radio. The general then gestured to one of the majors who had entered with him. "Major Williams, I want you to escort Captain Morrison to his office. He is not to touch anything, communicate with anyone, or access any computer systems. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, sir," Major Williams responded, stepping forward. Captain Morrison's face had gone from purple to a sickly gray. His eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal looking for an escape route. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding. If you would just let me explain." "You'll have plenty of time to explain," the general said coldly. To the investigators, "Take him." Major Williams placed a firm hand on Morrison's shoulder. For a moment, I thought the captain might resist, might make a scene, but something in the major's grip, or perhaps in the general's unwavering stare, made him deflate like a punctured balloon. As Morrison was led out, he shot me a look of pure hatred, a look that said this wasn't over, a look that promised consequences. I fought the urge to look away. After 3 months of bowing my head, of accepting injustice in silence, I met his gaze head on. I had told the truth. Whatever happened next, at least I had done that. The door closed behind them with a heavy thud. The general turned back to me, and his expression softened considerably. "At ease, soldier." I relaxed my posture slightly, but my heart was still racing. Everything had happened so fast. 5 minutes ago, I was folding uniforms, invisible and defeated. Now, a 4-star general was investigating my claims, and my tormentor was being escorted away like a criminal. It felt surreal, like a dream I might wake up from at any moment. "Sir," I began, my voice shaky, "I need you to know that I'm not making this up. I'm not crazy, I'm not traumatized, I'm not—" "I know," the general interrupted gently. "I believe you, Soldier Martinez. Do you want to know why?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Because I've been doing this for 40 years. I've seen thousands of soldiers, and I've learned to recognize certain things. Liars look away. Liars fidget. Liars give too many details or too few. You did none of those things. You looked me in the eye and told me the truth, knowing it could cost you everything." He paused, studying my face. "And because I remember you, from the ceremony in Washington, you stood on that stage with 11 other soldiers, the ones you saved, and when I pinned that silver star on your uniform, I saw something in your eyes. Honor, real honor, that doesn't just disappear." My throat tightened. I had thought that ceremony was the proudest moment of my life. Standing there in my dress uniform, with the families of the soldiers I saved watching from the audience, some of them crying, all of them clapping. I had thought nothing could ever take that feeling away from me. But Morrison had tried. And for 3 months, I had almost believed he had succeeded. "Sir," I said quietly, "why are you here? I mean, in this depot. 4-star generals don't usually inspect uniform storage facilities. A slight smile crossed the general's face. You're right. I was actually here for a quarterly command review. Captain Morrison was supposed to present his unit's readiness report, but something didn't add up in his numbers. Supply requisitions were unusually high, but equipment readiness was unusually low. It made no sense. He gestured around the depot. So I decided to do what I always do when something doesn't add up. I started looking in unexpected places. I wanted to see the supply chain firsthand, talk to soldiers who actually handle the equipment, and then I heard that he had a soldier on extended disciplinary duty in here. I thought I'd check in, see what warranted 2 weeks of punishment. He shook his head slowly. I never expected to find a Silver Star recipient folding laundry. The door opened again, and a young sergeant entered carrying a large tablet and what looked like a portable printer. He couldn't have been more than 25 years old, with bright red hair and freckles covering his face. Sergeant Davis reporting as ordered, sir. Good, the general said. Davis, I need you to take a formal statement from Soldier Martinez. Everything she knows about supply discrepancies, missing equipment, and any other irregularities she's observed. Document it all. Yes, sir. The general turned back to me. Soldier Martinez, I need you to tell Sergeant Davis everything. Don't leave anything out, no matter how small or insignificant it might seem. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Good. I have some calls to make. The audit team should be here within 2 hours. He started to leave, then paused at the door and looked back at me. And Martinez, thank you for not giving up, for not letting them break you. With that, he was gone, leaving me alone with Sergeant Davis. The young sergeant pulled up a folding chair and gestured for me to sit. I did, my legs suddenly feeling weak now that the adrenaline was starting to fade. Okay, he said, opening up his tablet. Let's start from the beginning. When did you first notice something was wrong? I took a deep breath, organizing my thoughts. This was my chance, maybe my only chance to tell the full story. It started about 6 months ago, I began. I had just returned from medical leave after my injuries in Afghanistan. I was reassigned to logistics coordination under Captain Morrison's command. Davis nodded, typing rapidly on his tablet. At first, everything seemed normal. Standard supply requisitions, regular inventory checks, nothing unusual. But then I started noticing discrepancies. Small things at first. A requisition form for 50 units of night vision equipment, but only 35 showing up in inventory. A shipment manifest for 200 MREs, but only 150 in storage. Keep going, Davis encouraged. I thought maybe it was just paperwork errors. Happens all the time, right? But it kept occurring. Always the same pattern. Requisition forms showing larger quantities than what actually arrived. And always with Captain Morrison's signature on the authorization. When did you start documenting it? About 4 months ago. I kept a notebook at first, just noting the discrepancies. But then I started taking photos of the forms, making copies when I could. I wanted to be sure before I said anything. Smart, Davis said. What made you finally confront him? I found the shipping manifests, I said, and I could hear my own voice getting stronger, more confident as I told the story. The real ones, not the altered versions that were being filed. They were in Morrison's office. I was dropping off a report, and he had stepped out for a moment. His filing cabinet was open, and I saw a folder labeled External Shipments. Something about it felt wrong. You looked inside, Davis stated rather than asked. I did. And that's when I realized what was happening. Morrison was ordering equipment through proper military channels, but then he was selling off a portion of it before it ever reached our inventory. He had contacts on the outside, buyers who would pay cash for military-grade equipment. How much are we talking about? Based on what I saw, at least $500,000 worth of equipment over the past year. Maybe more. Davis let out a low whistle. That's not just career ending. That's federal prison. I know, I said quietly. That's why I thought I had to say something. Soldiers depend on that equipment. Lives depend on it. If we get deployed and we're short on gear because Morrison sold it, I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't have to. So you confronted him, Davis prompted. Privately, I said. I didn't want to cause a scene. I thought maybe if I gave him a chance to come forward himself, to turn himself in, it would go easier for him. I actually thought I was doing him a favor. I laughed bitterly at my own naivety. What did he say? He denied everything at first. Said I was misreading the documents, that I didn't understand how military logistics worked. But I could see the panic in his eyes. He knew I had him. And then he got angry. Started yelling at me, telling me I was making a huge mistake. He said that if I reported this, he would make sure I never worked in the military again. That he had friends in high places who would destroy my career. Did he threaten you physically? No. He's too smart for that. But the next day, I was called into a formal disciplinary hearing. Morrison had filed a report saying that I had been caught stealing equipment, that I had been trying to cover my tracks by creating false documentation to frame him. Classic reversal, Davis muttered, shaking his head. Accuse the accuser. It gets worse, I continued. At the hearing, there were 3 other officers present, all of whom were friends with Morrison. The evidence I had gathered, the photos and documents I had copied, Morrison claimed they were fabricated. He said I had created them using Photoshop, that I was mentally unstable from my combat experience and was seeing conspiracies everywhere. Davis looked up from his tablet, his expression sympathetic, and they believed him. They did, I said, feeling that familiar knot of anger and helplessness in my chest. Or maybe they didn't believe him, but he was a captain and I was a sergeant. They went with rank. I was demoted to private, given a formal reprimand on my record, and assigned to menial duties. What about your evidence? The photos? The documents? Confiscated. Morrison said they needed to be secured as evidence of my misconduct, my attempt to frame a superior officer. He assured everyone they would be properly logged and stored, but I knew the truth. He was going to destroy them. And he did. How do you know? Because 2 weeks later, when I tried to file a formal complaint with the Inspector General's office, they told me there was no evidence on file. No photos, no documents, nothing. It was my word against a decorated captain with 20 years of service. So you gave up, Davis said, but there was no judgment in his voice, just understanding. For a while, yes, I admitted. What was the point? No one believed me. I had no proof. And every time I tried to speak up, Morrison found a new reason to punish me. Extra duties, extended work hours, and eventually this, 2 weeks of folding uniforms for insubordination, because I dared to question him in front of other soldiers. What did you question him about? We were in a supply briefing 3 days ago. He was explaining why we were short on tactical vests for an upcoming training exercise. He said the supplier had shorted us, that we only received 60% of our order. But I had seen the delivery manifest that morning. We had received the full order, 100 vests, but only 60 made it to inventory. I leaned forward, my hands clenched into fists. I asked him, in front of everyone, where the other 40 vests had gone. He couldn't answer. He just turned red and told me to see him after the meeting. That's when he assigned me this punishment, said I was undermining unit morale and questioning the chain of command. Davis finished typing and looked up at me. Is there anything else? Anyone else who might have witnessed any of this? Anyone who could corroborate your story? I hesitated. This was the part I had been dreading. There's one person, I said slowly. Private First Class Tommy Reynolds. He works in the supply depot. He's seen Morrison meeting with civilians after hours, loading equipment into unmarked trucks. But he's terrified. Morrison threatened him, told him if he ever said anything, He'd make sure Tommy got deployed to the most dangerous posting available. We'll need to talk to him, Davis said gently. But that's not your responsibility. The investigators will handle it. He'll deny. Everything, I said. Morrison's smart. He'll have covered his tracks. And I have no physical evidence anymore. It's just my word. Not quite, a voice said from the doorway. Both Davis and I jumped. Neither of us had heard the door open. A young soldier stood there, couldn't have been more than 20 years old. He was thin, with sandy brown hair and nervous eyes that kept darting around the room. He was holding a manila envelope in shaking hands. "Private Reynolds," I breathed. Tommy Reynolds stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind him. He looked terrified, like he might bolt at any second. "I heard that General Harrison was investigating Captain Morrison," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is that true?" "It's true," Sergeant Davis said, standing up. "Private, do you have information relevant to this investigation?" Tommy clutched the envelope tighter. "I have evidence," he said. "Photos, documents, digital files on a flash drive. Everything Sergeant Martinez said is true. I've been documenting Morrison's activities for months." My heart leaped into my throat. "Tommy, why didn't you say something before?" "Because I'm a coward," he said, and there were tears in his eyes now. "Because I was scared. Morrison told me he'd ruin my life if I talked. He said he'd plant drugs in my locker and have me dishonorably discharged, and I believed him. I stayed quiet while he destroyed you, Sarah, while he took everything from you. And I'll never forgive myself for that." He thrust the envelope toward Sergeant Davis. "But I can't stay quiet anymore. Not when a 4-star general is finally paying attention. Not when there's finally a chance for justice." Davis took the envelope carefully, as if it were made of glass. "Private Reynolds, I need you to understand the seriousness of what you're doing. If you provide false information to investigators—" "It's not false," Tommy interrupted. "Every photo in there is real. Every document is authentic. I was careful. I made copies of everything Morrison thought he had destroyed." He looked at me, and fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry I didn't stand up for you before." I stood up and crossed the room to him. Without thinking, I pulled him into a hug. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for being brave now." Sergeant Davis was already opening the envelope, pulling out its contents. His eyes widened as he flipped through the documents. This is everything. Shipping manifests, bank statements, photographs of Morrison loading equipment into civilian vehicles, text messages. "Private Reynolds, how did you get all of this?" "I work in the supply depot," Tommy explained, pulling away from our hug and wiping his eyes. "I have access to all the shipping records, and Morrison trusted me, or at least he thought he had intimidated me enough that I'd never talk. He got sloppy. He'd leave documents on his desk, have phone conversations where I could hear him. I just started documenting everything." The door burst open again, and General Harrison strode back in. He took one look at the scene, at Tommy's tearful face, at the documents in Davis's hands, and his expression became very focused. "What do we have?" "Sir," Sergeant Davis said, his voice filled with barely contained excitement, "we have everything." General Harrison took the envelope from Sergeant Davis and carefully spread its contents across the top of a storage crate. Documents, photographs, and a small flash drive tumbled out. His expression remained neutral, but I could see his jaw tightening as he examined each piece of evidence. "Private Reynolds?" the general said without looking up. "How long have you been collecting this?" 7 months, sir," Tommy answered, his voice steadier now. "Since shortly after Sergeant Martinez was demoted." "And why didn't you come forward sooner?" Tommy swallowed hard. "Fear, sir. Captain Morrison made it very clear what would happen if I talked. But also, I didn't know who to trust. Morrison had friends, other officers who looked the other way. I was afraid that if I went to the wrong person, the evidence would disappear and I'd be next. The general looked up at him then, and his expression softened slightly. That took courage, Private. More courage than most people have. He turned back to the documents, picking up one photograph in particular. Even from where I stood, I could see it clearly. Captain Morrison, in civilian clothes, shaking hands with a man beside an unmarked white van. The back of the van was open, revealing boxes with military markings. When was this taken? 3 weeks ago, sir, Tommy said. Behind the south warehouse, around 2300 hours. The general picked up another photo. This one showed Morrison handing over what appeared to be a thick envelope to the same man. And this? Same night. A few minutes later. That's the payment exchange. General Harrison's face had gone completely cold. This wasn't just anger. This was the face of a man who had dedicated his entire life to the military, to honor and duty, watching one of his officers betray everything that uniform represented. Sergeant Davis, the general said quietly, get the Inspector General's office on the phone. Tell them I need a full investigative team here within the hour. And contact the military police. I want Captain Morrison placed under arrest immediately. Yes, sir, Davis said, pulling out his phone and stepping toward the corner of the room. The general turned to me. Soldier Martinez, I owe you more than an apology. You tried to do the right thing, and the system failed you. I failed you. Sir, you didn't know. That's not an excuse. He cut me off, but his tone was gentle. It's my job to know. It's my job to make sure soldiers like Morrison don't prey on soldiers like you. And I should have seen this sooner. He looked back at the evidence spread before him. But we're going to make this right. All of it. Sir, I began, my voice shaking slightly. What happens now? I mean, to me? Now? The general's expression became thoughtful. Now we restore what was taken from you. Your rank, your honor, your career. But first I need you to do something for me. Anything, sir. I need you to face him. Morrison. When the MPs bring him in for questioning, I want you there. I want him to see that he didn't break you. That his lies didn't destroy you. I felt a chill run down my spine. The thought of facing Morrison, of being in the same room with the man who had systematically dismantled my life, made my stomach turn. But I also felt something else. Something I hadn't felt in 3 months. Anger. Not the helpless, swallowed rage I had been carrying, but righteous anger. The kind that demands justice. I can do that, sir. Good, the general said with a slight nod. The door opened and Major Williams returned, slightly out of breath. Sir, we have a situation. The general's expression sharpened immediately. What kind of situation? Captain Morrison is gone, sir. When we got to his office, he wasn't there. His computer has been wiped, and his filing cabinets are empty. He cleared out everything. A heavy silence fell over the room. How long ago? Can't be more than 15 minutes, Williams said. His secretary said he returned to his office right after we escorted him there, told her he needed to make some urgent phone calls, and sent her on an early break. When she came back 10 minutes later, he was gone. The general's face remained calm, but I could see the storm building behind his eyes. Lock down the base. No one in or out without authorization. Contact base security and have them check all gate logs for the past 20 minutes. And get his photo circulated to every MP on this installation. Yes, sir, Williams said, already pulling out his radio. The general turned to Tommy. Private Reynolds, those documents you have, are there copies anywhere else? Yes, sir, Tommy said quickly. Digital copies on a cloud server. Morrison doesn't know about them. Good. Keep it that way. My mind was racing. Morrison had run. That meant he knew it was over, that the investigation would uncover everything. But it also meant he was desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. Sir, I said, Morrison knows the base. He's been here for 3 years. If he wants to disappear, he knows how to do it. You're right, the general acknowledged, which is why we're not going to let him get that far. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Colonel Patterson, this is General Harrison. I need you to ground all flights out of Fort Bragg immediately. No exceptions. And contact the state police. I need roadblocks on all major highways within a 50-mile radius. We have an officer attempting to flee an investigation. He listened for a moment, his expression darkening. I don't care if it's irregular. This is a direct order from a 4-star general. Make it happen. He hung up and looked at me. Morrison won't get far. Men like him, they think they're smarter than everyone else. They think they've planned for every contingency. But they always make mistakes. I hope you're right, sir. I know I am, he said with absolute certainty. I've been hunting men a lot more dangerous than Captain Morrison for 40 years. Sergeant Davis approached, holding his phone. Sir, the IG's office is sending a team. ETA 45 minutes, and the MPs have Morrison's vehicle description. All units are searching. The general nodded. Good. Williams, I want you to secure Morrison's office. Nothing gets touched until the investigators arrive. Davis, you stay with Soldier Martinez and Private Reynolds. Get full written statements from both of them. Yes, sir, they said in unison. The general started toward the door, then paused and looked back at me. Soldier Martinez, this is going to get complicated. There will be investigations, hearings, probably a court-martial. Morrison will have lawyers, and they'll try to discredit you again. Are you prepared for that? I thought about it for a moment. 3 months ago, the answer would have been no. 3 months ago, I was broken, defeated, ready to just serve out my time and leave the military behind. But standing there, with evidence finally in hand, with people finally believing me, I felt different. I'm prepared, sir. I've been through worse. The general smiled slightly. Yes, you have. Afghanistan proved that. With that, he left, and I heard his boots echoing down the hallway, firm and purposeful. Sergeant Davis gestured for me and Tommy to sit down. All right, let's get these statements done. Start from the beginning, every detail you can remember. For the next 30 minutes, Tommy and I recounted everything. Every discrepancy, every suspicious meeting, every threat Morrison had made. Davis typed furiously, occasionally asking clarifying questions. I was in the middle of describing the fake disciplinary hearing when Davis's radio crackled to life. All units, we have a visual on Captain Morrison's vehicle, heading eastbound on Route 87, approximately 3 miles from the main gate. Units in pursuit. Davis looked up at us, his eyes bright. They found him. My heart started pounding. After 3 months of feeling helpless, of watching Morrison walk around the base like he owned it, they had finally caught up to him. Can we? I started, then stopped myself. It wasn't my place to ask, but Davis seemed to read my mind. You want to see this? It wasn't a question. Yes, I admitted. Davis stood up. Come on, both of you. We followed him out of the depot and toward a building marked Security Operations. Inside, a room filled with monitors showed camera feeds from all over the base. Several MPs were gathered around one screen in particular, which showed an aerial view from what must have been a helicopter. On the screen, I could see Morrison's black sedan racing down a road with 2 MP vehicles in pursuit, lights flashing. Where's he going? Tommy asked. Nowhere, one of the MPs said grimly. We've got the east gate blocked off. He's trapped. As we watched, Morrison's car suddenly swerved off the road and into a wooded area. The pursuing vehicles stopped, and we could see officers jumping out. He's on foot, someone said. The helicopter view zoomed in, tracking a figure running through the trees. Even from this distance, Even through the grainy camera feed, I could tell it was Morrison. The way he moved, the desperate sprint of someone who knew it was over. He ran for maybe 200 yards before a group of MPs emerged from the trees ahead of him, cutting off his escape. He skidded to a stop, looked around wildly, then dropped to his knees. "Got him!" one of the MPs in the room said with satisfaction. The camera showed Morrison being handcuffed and led back toward the vehicles. Even through the screen, I could see his shoulders slumped in defeat. I felt something release in my chest, a tension I had been carrying for so long. I had forgotten it was there. "It's over," Tommy whispered beside me. "Not yet," I said quietly. "But soon." 20 minutes later, we were back in a conference room in the base headquarters building. General Harrison sat at the head of a long table with Major Williams beside him. Sergeant Davis, Tommy, and I sat across from them. The door opened, and 2 MPs entered, escorting Captain Morrison between them. He looked terrible. His uniform was dirty from his run through the woods with leaves and twigs still stuck to it. His face was pale and covered in sweat. But his eyes, when they found mine across the room, still held that same hatred, that same contempt. "Captain Morrison," General Harrison said coldly, "you are under arrest for theft of military property, fraud, conspiracy, conduct unbecoming an officer, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. Do you understand these rights?" Morrison didn't respond. He just stared at the general with defiant eyes. "I asked you a question, Captain." "I understand," Morrison finally spat out. "Good. Sit down." The MPs pushed him into a chair. Morrison winced but tried to maintain some dignity. General Harrison spread the photographs across the table, one by one. Each one a damning piece of evidence. Morrison's eyes widened slightly as he saw them, but he quickly tried to mask his reaction. "We found your buyers," the general said conversationally. "Took the MPs about 15 minutes after we arrested you. They were waiting at a warehouse outside of Fayetteville with $50,000 in cash, expecting a delivery of tactical equipment tonight." Morrison's face went even paler. "They're very eager to cooperate," the general continued. "Very eager to give us names, dates, amounts, everything. In exchange for reduced sentences, of course." "I didn't," Morrison started, then stopped. "Didn't what?" The general leaned forward. "Didn't sell military equipment? Didn't frame Soldier Martinez? Didn't destroy evidence? Didn't threaten Private Reynolds? Which part didn't you do, Captain?" Morrison's jaw worked silently. "Because we have evidence of all of it," the general said, his voice dropping to something dangerously quiet. "Photos, documents, witness testimony, bank records showing deposits that match the sale amounts, text messages from your personal phone. Your lawyer is going to have a very difficult time explaining any of this." Morrison's eyes darted to me, then to Tommy, then back to the general. He pointed at me with shaking finger. "She was stealing. I caught her and she tried to frame me to save herself." I didn't move, didn't flinch, just met his eyes steadily. The general didn't even look at me. He just kept his gaze locked on Morrison. Soldier Martinez was awarded the Silver Star for saving 11 lives in combat. She has an exemplary service record spanning 6 years. You, on the other hand, have now been caught red-handed attempting to flee an investigation after wiping your computer and destroying files. He leaned back in his chair. "So tell me, Captain, who do you think a court-martial is going to believe?" Morrison's mouth opened and closed. His face turned red, then purple. I could see him trying to find an argument, an excuse, anything that might save him. But there was nothing, and he knew it. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time since I had known him, Captain Morrison looked small. "I want a lawyer," he whispered. "You'll get one," the general said. "Take him to the detention facility." The MPs hauled Morrison to his feet. As they led him toward the door, he looked back at me one last time. The hatred was gone from his eyes now. All that remained was defeat and the dawning realization of what he had lost. The door closed behind them with a heavy thud. The silence in the room was profound. General Harrison turned to look at me, and his expression had completely changed. The cold fury was gone, replaced by something warmer. "Soldier Martinez," he said, "stand up." I stood, my heart pounding. "As of this moment, you are hereby reinstated to the rank of sergeant, with all rights, privileges, and back pay owed to you. Your service record will be corrected to remove all disciplinary actions related to this case. And you have my personal assurance that every officer who enabled Captain Morrison's behavior will be investigated thoroughly." I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I fought them back. "Furthermore," the general continued, "I am recommending you for a commendation for your courage in exposing corruption despite significant personal cost. The Army needs more soldiers like you, Sergeant Martinez, not fewer." "Thank you, sir," I managed to say, though my voice cracked slightly. The general stood and extended his hand. "Welcome back, Sergeant." I shook his hand, and this time I couldn't stop the tears. 3 days later, I stood on the parade ground with hundreds of soldiers in formation. General Harrison's voice carried across the field. "At ease. 3 days ago, we uncovered serious corruption on this base. Captain Morrison has been arrested and will face court-martial for theft, fraud, and obstruction of justice." He paused, looking directly at me. "But today, I want to talk about courage. Sergeant Sarah Martinez, front and center." My heart pounded as I marched forward and stood at attention before him. "Sergeant Martinez, 18 months ago, you saved 11 soldiers in Afghanistan. 3 months ago, you exposed corruption and were punished for it, demoted, humiliated, but you never gave up." He opened a small box. "For your integrity and courage in exposing corruption, I award you the Army Commendation Medal." He pinned it next to my silver star as the entire formation erupted in applause. "You represent the very best of what this army should be," he said quietly. "Never doubt that." 2 weeks later, I walked into my new office. Not the uniform depot where I'd been punished, but the logistics coordination center. My new command. Tommy, now promoted to specialist, handed me a report. "All inventory checks complete. No discrepancies for the 2nd week in a row." "Good," I said. "Keep it that way." Morrison's court-martial had concluded yesterday. 35 years in military prison. The other corrupt officers were awaiting trial. 14 soldiers who'd been unjustly punished were having their records corrected. The system had worked. Eventually. That evening, I stood alone in the old uniform depot one last time. The place where everything had changed. Where the general had seen my scars and recognized the truth. I touched the medals on my chest. Silver Star for physical courage. Commendation. Medal for moral courage. Both mattered. Both were necessary. 3 months ago, I'd been kneeling here, broken and defeated. Now I was standing tall, leading a team, rebuilding what corruption had destroyed. Morrison had tried to break me. He'd failed. I walked out of that depot for the last time, closing the door behind me. Tomorrow, there would be work to do, soldiers to lead, systems to build, trust to restore. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel what I hadn't felt in months. Pride, not just in surviving, but in never giving up. In fighting for what was right even when it cost me everything. Sergeant Sarah Martinez, United States Army, unbroken.